Hey guys, and welcome to episode number 88 of Diehlman at Halftime, the NBA podcast that tops all others. I'm your host, Larry Diehlman, joined by my co-host, Chris DiPietro. If you're joining us for the first time, it's great to have you, and if you've been a regular listener, welcome back. We have a lot to cover today and not a lot of time to do it. We'll look at a general overview of the NBA this week and then discuss some important topics across the association. Let's get to our content for the week. Nikola Jokic of the Denver Nuggets is making some news this week as he is now second all-time in career triple-doubles with 182. He passed the legend Oscar Robertson, and now he only trails Russell Westbrook, who has more with 207. For their careers, Jokic averages a triple-double about every 4 games, while Westbrook has one in approximately every 6 games. So Jokic on a faster pace than Russ. Jokic averaged a triple-double for the first time in his career last year, and right now he's averaging about 29 points, 12 boards, and a career-high 10.7 assists per game. He's only 30 right now. He turns 31 on February 19th. So, Chris, Nikola Jokic, I think everybody just kind of talks about him ad nauseum. It's just something that, you can't stop talking about. He's just so good. But second all time in NBA history as a center, Russell Westbrook and Oscar Robertson both are point guards. And the fact that he's a center, I mean, it's just absolutely crazy that he probably will break the record just because Russ isn't what he once was. He's not dropping triple doubles every game like he was in OKC or anything. But Nikola Jokic is just one of a kind.
Yeah, I mean, he's gonna shatter this. Yeah, that's not even a question at this point. He's gonna shatter this record. You alluded to it earlier with their per game pace for triple doubles, but yeah, I mean, Jokic is about 500 games played behind Russ right now and has 25 less triple doubles at the moment. I mean, dude, he might have that record by halfway through midseason. It's just crazy how quickly he's been able to do it. It's just unreal. And like you mentioned with the point guards, it's mostly point guards doing this who have the ball a lot in their hands. But, if it isn't, clear enough already that how heavily the offense runs through Jokic in Denver, let this be the proof. I mean, to get a triple-double in the NBA, you have to have the ball in your hands a lot. The offense has to kind of run through you to even have the opportunity to put up those types of numbers in one specific game. And you look at the top of this list, I mean, it's primarily point guards. I mean, the first big man I really see down here is Wilt Chamberlain with 78 triple-doubles, more than 100 less than Jokic in 300 more games than Jokic played. I mean, that's really the only center I see down here. So, I mean, this just goes to show, how involved Jokic is in with this offense and just how historically strong he is as the hub of this offense. He's such a unique player in a unique situation with the ball in his hands so much. And yeah, he's going to absolutely shatter this record in no time. It's going to be his record. And it's going to be his for a long time.
Yeah, Nikola Jokic is just something we've never seen before. And as another point that's always brought up is that this man was literally drafted during a Taco Bell commercial. Back in 2014, he was a late second round pick, drafted during a Taco Bell commercial, and now he's an all-time great, not only as a center, but just as a player in general. And I think Jokic will eventually be top 10 if he's not already with another championship. So we'll see how that goes. But this record should be Nikola Jokic's in no time. He's about 25-ish away. That's if Russ doesn't get any more, obviously. But we'll see when he can shatter that record. So as we get closer to the All-Star break, we can start bracing for the second half of the NBA season. But first, this week's episode of Diehlman at Halftime is a special edition. Instead of our usual weekly discussions and game of the week, we're going to dive into the top 5 trades of this past Thursday's deadline. But before our analyses, we each threw in an honorable mention as well. The trades will be in reverse order from pretty good to super important. We're going to go honorable mention and then 5 to 1 on each side. This episode is entitled Deals and Steals. So, who's raising eyebrows at the moment? Let's kick things off for our NBA trade deadline special edition episode. I will start each section. So Chris and I will take turns with honorable mentions, and then I'll do my five, his five, four, etc. So I'll start with my honorable mention, and it's some of these I did maybe a team because they had a few trades, and some of them was just a specific player. My honorable mention, Mike Conley of the Minnesota Timberwolves had a pretty exciting week to say the least. Traded multiple times to the Bulls and the Hornets. He was waived by the Hornets, and now Mike Conley is expected to go right back to the Timberwolves. And he might wait until after the All-Star break due to cap space reasons. Now, what's interesting about the Mike Conley situation, if he was released, let's say just by the Bulls, he would not have been able to go back to Minnesota for a year because of the NBA rules. However, he got released after the second team he was traded to. So he went to two teams and then got released by the second team. Because of that loophole, Mike Conley is allowed to sign back with the Timberwolves. This is called the Andrew Bogut rule, which limits a team that traded a player from signing them right back. Because Andrew Bogut was traded to Dallas when KD went to the Warriors, and then Bogut got cut by the Sixers, and he went back to the Warriors, etc. So Mike Conley had an interesting week, and he's my honorable mention for top five trades.
Yeah, there were just a couple trades I wanted to mention here before we get into our five best. Vit Krejčí to Portland. I thought that was a great move for Portland. They just had to move Duop Reith and two second-round picks for Vit, and Vit is pretty much exactly what this Portland team needed, which was an experienced ball handler and more importantly, somebody that can shoot the out of the ball, which Vit can do. He's shooting 42% from three this year, shot 44% last year. He's historically over a 40% three-point shooter. And Portland is near dead last in three-point percentage out of all the teams in the league right now. So just being able to add a player like him is awesome, and I'm surprised Atlanta wanted to move on from him. And again, the price of Duop Reith and 2 seconds, that is a bargain for a shooter like Vit Krejci at a desperate need. So I want to mention that one. And also, this one was pretty funny to me. Tyus Jones and two second-round picks to the Charlotte Hornets for, drumroll please, Cash considerations. Cash considerations is one of the best players in the league. Just has an immense track record of being a productive player. But, he's been on the move a lot throughout his career, Cash considerations has. And getting moved for Tyus Jones in 2 seconds here. I think I'm going to have to give the edge to Charlotte on this one. They get an experienced ball handler, Tyus Jones. And again, two second round picks, quality draft assets. Cash is a good player. Cash has been productive in years prior, but I don't think Cash is quite who he used to be. After that inflation injury, I think Cash's value has really took a dip. So I'm going to give the edge to Charlotte on this one. But yeah, just had to mention the Tyus Jones Cash consideration swap before we get into our top five.
Are you calling my boy cash considerations washed after that inflation injury?
Listen, bro, like I get it, it gets real political and everything, but it just the borderline is his value as an asset has just gone down. And Tyus Jones is still an experienced vet who you can place the ball in his hands and you also get two draft assets on top of that. I think that's a heck of a return for Cash at this point of his career. Before we get to my five, I was just wondering, how did you rank your five? Because the way I did it was I took a look at all the trades and I ranked them by who I thought got the best deal. They weren't ranked on, like the size or the prestige of the trade. Like if LeBron got traded, it wouldn't be one. I ranked them based on what one team got a lot better or what one team got a really good deal on a player. So how did you rank your trades?
I ranked my trades on I think just impact in general.
Like the
McCain,
gravity?
gravity, because like McCain can be an asset for the Thunder. All right, let's move into the top five trades of this past Thursday's deadline. And as I said a few moments ago, we're going in reverse order leading up to each of our number one trades. So I will start, and all of my trades, I put a little title along with it to kind of set the scene here. My number five trade in my analysis, I will go with the rich get richer again. Jared McCain to the Oklahoma City
Oh,
Thunder.
God, Larry.
The Thunder, in case you weren't paying attention, sent a 2026 first and 3 seconds to the 76ers for Jared McCain. McCain was a Rookie of the Year favorite last year before injuries struck him down, and he fell out of the rotation this year on the Sixers with the rise of VJ Edgecombe. And of course, you have Tyrese Maxey and Quentin Grimes. A lot of guards, can't really fit them all in there. Jared made his OKC debut the other day, 5 points in 14 minutes. And the question remains for the Thunder, can the Thunder unlock that 15 points per game scorer that McCain was back in his rookie season? And what's interesting on the Sixers side is that Daryl Morey was saying that Daryl Morey being the Sixers president of basketball operations, he said that they were basically selling high on McCain and I guess trying to get all those assets. But what's hilarious is that these picks are going to be absolutely worthless because the Thunder are most likely going to win the championship again. That first round pick, all right, whatever. And then three
It's
seconds,
Houston's,
yeah.
which doesn't really
That doesn't make anything better either because the Rockets are
yeah, I mean
contenders too.
it's a little better, but
The Rockets
it's
and
not
the
much
Thunder,
better.
the Rockets and the Thunder could very well meet in the conference finals unless the Spurs have something to say about it. And then 3 seconds, it's like, all right, meh, whatever. But the rich get richer again. Jared McCain can be a bench option for the Thunder. And who knows? We'll see what Mark Daigneault wants to do. But that is my number five.
Okay, so first of all, you did not have to come out of the gate with the Jared McCain trade. Respectfully, dude, like screw you for that. Like I really just
You're
did
not ready
not
for
want
the rest of these, are you?
I just did not want to hear about that right now. I unfortunately have to talk about it on my own in a little bit. Just heartbreaking. Just heartbreaking stuff. As a Sixers fan, it's tough to see him go. And believe me, I will get to this trade later, a lot later. But yeah, it's just tough. And Oklahoma City got an absolute steal for a player as talented as McCain. They gave up 4 draft picks, but given how many they have and the quality that these picks are going to be, yeah, I mean they just cashed in for kind of picks for a player who could be a whole lot better than those picks. I thought it was a really good trade for OKC, but I'll get to more about that. My number five, I low key like James Harden in Cleveland. I think it's a pretty interesting spin on a team that had kind of felt like it hit its limit. Its underwhelming limit. We saw this team in the playoffs last year with a stronger coaching staff with Jordan Ott. Again, now the Suns head coach who's doing really good right now, and I think Cleveland is kind of feeling the effect of his absence. I thought last year's Cleveland team had everything they needed to make a deep run, and it just didn't happen. And this four-man core of Garland, Mitchell, Mobley, and Jared Allen had it kind of just got a bit tiresome, especially considering how they started the season. Darius Garland is a player who they would have been paying like near max money for the next many years, and they saw an opportunity where they could not only get out of that type of deal because Darius Garland's a great basketball player, but it's like where do we draw the line with these max contracts? Because everyone and their mother demands a max contract. It's like where do we draw the line where we feel comfortable paying this guy $55 million dollars over the next 5 years? And I don't know if Darius Garland's one of those players. I kind of lean that he's not. So they saw an opportunity to move off of a guy that might not be worth his contract for a player who's on a much more team-friendly contract in terms of the length of it. They can get off Harden a lot quicker than they would have been able to get off of Garland. And a player who probably gives them a better chance to compete for this year. I think James Harden's a better basketball player than Darius Garland. And again, if I think it gives them a better chance to win. And if this thing doesn't work, they have the option to get out of this relatively quick and pivot to something else, which they didn't have with Garland. If Garland was just going to keep being injured and kind of mid, they didn't really have an out. But this was an out for them, and they took it, and they increased their chances to win and be successful, and they gave themselves more flexibility down the road. So I actually, it really grew on me. I really like James Harden in Cleveland.
I will also have more thoughts on that later, but to give a brief rebuttal, seeing James Harden it kind of just came out of nowhere. The Clippers were on a roll, and then all of a sudden it was, oh, here goes James Harden out of LA and Darius Garland being attached to a second round pick to get him out of Cleveland. Not a lot of fireworks on that trade. It was just kind of like a player and then a player pick swap. Nothing like 8 players or like a 5 team
Yeah.
trade. It was just
It
it was
it just felt
simple.
kind of random too, which is it's
Yeah,
just
it
like
was.
you see it and you're not like shocked and your jaw's not on the floor. You're just kind of like, what? Like
This wasn't this
what led
wasn't
to
this
this?
wasn't James
Like
Harden to the Sixers. This was James Harden to the Cavs, and you're like, all right, he's back in the Eastern Conference. So yeah, I will have more to say on that later. Let's transition to our number 4 trades. My next topic will be Go West, young man. And this is Jaren Jackson Jr. going to Salt Lake City to pair up with Larry Markkinen on the Utah Jazz. Big trade between the Jazz and the Grizzlies. Jaren Jackson Jr., Jock Landale, John Conchar, and Vince Williams Jr. went to Utah for Walter Clayton Jr., Kyle Anderson, Taylor Hendricks, George Niang, and 3 first-round picks. Jock Landale was eventually rerouted to Atlanta for our boy cash considerations, and George Niang was waived by Memphis. So there goes the minivan. JJJ gives the Jazz a desperately needed proven star to jumpstart a bid for future playoff contention. The Jazz, they're in a weird spot. They've been kind of low key tanking for the last couple years with Will Hardy. Not a very popular free agent destination. I don't know how many star players and celebrities want to go live in Salt Lake City willingly. So getting somebody like Jaren Jackson Jr., who is a great defensive option, getting him away from the Grizzlies can help kind of jumpstart or give their playoff contention hopes a little kick in the ass. The Grizzlies, though, I'm wondering, are they waving the white flag on this current core? Because John Morant, according to the
you're
reports,
wondering.
I'm trying to be nice.
It's
There were
clearly.
reports that John Morant basically had a negative trade value on the trade market. Like he is borderline untradeable, or the offers they've gotten just were not what the Grizzlies wanted. Utah, honestly, I think this could set them up to have a really good front court presence with Jaren Jackson Jr. and Larry Markkinen. Larry Markkinen's more of the offensive option. Triple J will be the defensive option. I'd like to see how that combination works. And as they get some players to build toward the future and maybe one of these days get back in the play-in tournament. So the Grizzlies kind of breaking down their core, the Jazz building for the future, and that is my number 4 with Jaren Jackson Jr.
I have no thoughts on that trade right now because my number four trade, Jaren Jackson Jr. to the Utah
Wow,
Jazz.
how original.
Sorry. As I alluded to, I'm ranking these trades based off of one team's return in the trade, not the trade collectively, but the five instances where, or the five best instances where I think a team got a really good deal for a player. And I really like Memphis's return for Jaren Jackson Jr. I like Jaren Jackson Jr. as a player. And I actually do really like his fit in Utah. Not this season, but next season next to Walker Kessler. That is exactly the type of player you want next to Jaren Jackson Jr. because he's a great defender, and even at the rim, he's a great defender, but he is not a center. He's almost unplayable at center. Not that he's like a horrible center, but it's just not, in his blood to play center. He's not a good rebounder by any means. And that's such an important part of the position. When he plays center, he really gets washed out on the boards. And when you saw him next to Zach Edey in Memphis, it looked a whole lot better. And Jaren Jackson Jr. was a tremendously greater asset. And I think Walker Kessler is better than Zach Edey. So, I mean, I think this is an awesome fit for Jaren Jackson Jr. But I'm highlighting Memphis's side of the deal here. As good as a fit I think it is for Triple J, I don't think super highly of him as a player. Like I talked about with Darius Garland, it's like where do we draw the line with these max contracts? I feel like teams got to be more picky because again, Cleveland and clearly Memphis felt like they were in a situation where they had this guy signed for another 3, 4 years at the max level and didn't want him, and were trying to find ways to get off of him. So yeah, I didn't love Jaren Jackson Jr.'s contract situation, and I really just don't love the player he is. So I think getting 3 firsts along with Walter Clayton Jr. and Taylor Hendricks, who I think are some promising young players. More so Walter Clayton, obviously a March Madness legend, but he's a really fun young player. Taylor Hendricks, I mean, I don't he hasn't shown much promise since he's come into the league, but it's a lottery pick who in a new situation could blossom, and Kyle Anderson and George Niang, whatever. But getting like two promising young players and three first round picks on top of the five you received for Desmond Bane. This is just a total reset. There's no dancing around it. Memphis is punting on this entire core, clearly, and I
Ja,
really think it's in their best interest.
Ja Morant is clearly not fine in the West, by the way.
Yeah, well, not anymore when his second best player is about to be Cedric Coward. Yo, shout out Cedric Coward though. That's my guy. He's a stud. But yeah, I just love this return that Memphis was able to get for Triple J. I think it was one of the best deals of the deadline for one specific team involved. So both of our number fours we're twinning. For slightly different reasons, as you know, we have different criteria, but yeah.
Jaren Jackson Jr. definitely a great pickup for the Jazz and a great return for both sides. Jazz needs somebody to just, kickstart that playoff contention. The Grizzlies trying to rebuild desperately with new head coach Thomas Isalo. So we'll see what happens with both those teams in the future. All right, transitioning to the top three in our reverse order trade deadline analyses. And this one I am entitling Looking Toward the Future. And it kind of goes into what Chris said earlier, but I'm adding one more wrinkle to it. This section involves just the Clippers as they look toward the future. So their first trade, as Chris pointed out earlier, was trading James Harden to the Cleveland Cavaliers for Darius Garland and a second round pick. And then they decided to go one step further and trade Ivica Zubac and Kobe Brown to the Indiana Pacers for Benedict Mathurin, Isaiah Jackson, two first-round picks, and a second-round pick as well. They also sent Chris Paul to the Raptors, I guess, to get him off the books because he technically was still on the team. Chris Paul having one of the most pathetic farewell tours I've ever seen.
I thought we were trying to be nice on this pod today, Larry. Come
Touche.
on
I mean,
now.
banishing one of your all-time players to Canada.
No, you're
It,
not wrong. You're not wrong.
yeah, just Clippers, whatever. So anyway, it's interesting to see the Clippers trade two key pieces. As I said a few moments ago, the Clippers started off the season awful. Then they go on this big run. They're a hot team in the league, and all of a sudden they just traded, their point guard and their center, leaving pretty much just Kawhi Leonard for the moment. Harden now is on his fifth team in 6 years since the 2020 through 21 season, by the way. Ivica Zubac, he'll be a nice complement to Tyrese Halliburton once Tyrese comes back from injury next year. Zubac is also dealing with injury, and I think he just had a kid with his partner. So
Yo, if y'all don't know, Larry is on top of athlete pregnancies. Like their wives, if there's a dude in the NBA or NFL that is expecting a kid, Larry's on top of that. And I am not surprised whatsoever to see that he knows that Ivica Zubac is having a child. So Ivica, congrats, man. But I just had to shout out. That's one of Larry's areas of expertise is that I figured I had to mention you.
hey, it just comes up in my feed. I'm not like stalking these people or looking up hospital records. It just happens to come up in my feed, or maybe the player,
Yeah, okay. Okay, Larry.
like tags their spouse or something. So yeah, so Ivica Zubac is currently out for the moment, and it's not like the Pacers are going anywhere. Their season's long over. The minute Tyrese Halliburton blew his Achilles in the NBA Finals, we knew that this current season for the Pacers was all but over. But Benedict Mathurin will be a nice addition to the Clippers with proven playoff experience. He's been in the finals. Darius Garland, as Chris said, he can shine on the Clippers, have a larger role without being overshadowed by Donovan Mitchell. So the Clippers looking to the future, getting some young guards, trading away veterans like James Harden, who wasn't probably going to be a long-term option. He can still put up numbers, but maybe not somebody that you're going to throw your entire future away for, or just somebody that you're going to give a max contract, because James Harden still wants max contracts. And then Ivica Zubac, he's a great player, double doubles, but kind of limited with shots. He's not somebody that's going to take threes. He's not Jokic or anything, bringing the ball up the floor. He's kind of give you some paint defense, double doubles, great, but maybe the Pacers can get something out of him with Tyrese Halliburton after Miles Turner went to the Bucks, and maybe be a nice pick and roll threat in Indiana next season. So my number three is whatever the Clippers did this trade deadline.
I think they got great returns for Harden and Zubats. Again, I talked earlier about how I do really like Harden in Cleveland, and I really thought hard about throwing Zubats in Indiana on my list. I think he's a home run fit for Indy. Maybe not in the way you think because Indy plays very fast and Zubats is kind of like a tree, but I think he's a better player than Miles Turner. And I think they have a higher ceiling with Zubats in the paint than they did with Turner. So I love his fit in Indy, and I do really like Harden in Cleveland. But something I didn't really mention when I talked about Harden earlier. I like this. I like taking a shot on Darius Garland. Again, your franchise is kind of directionless at the moment, and taking a shot on a player who's a lot younger than James Harden and not just having to let Harden walk for nothing. I really like that. And they got a pick in the process. And I think LA also got quite the haul for Zubats. Zubats is a great player. I mean, people forget he was in Defensive Player of the Year conversations last year. He's a great player. But LA was able to get a haul of picks and Benedict Mathurin, who's a good player. I can almost tell for certain that it was Indiana who called LA and was ready to offer the kitchen sink for Zubats. Just because of this return, it's a fat return for Zubats. So I think LA did a really good job, getting assets back for Harden and Zubats. And it seems like they were unable to trade Kawhi Leonard. I think they probably would have if they saw an offer they really liked, because they're clearly headed in a different direction here. But yeah, I agree with that. As much as I love Harden in Cleveland and as much as I love Zubats in Indy, I think LA did do a really good job at maximizing those two assets. All right, so my number three of my top five NBA trades of this trade deadline. I'm going to go with Jose Alvarado to the New York Knicks. I just absolutely love this fit. I think he is exactly what they needed, and they got him for a really cheap price. Jose Alvarado is probably one of the best disrupting guards defensively in the league right now. He's just an absolute pest to deal with. Grand Theft Alvarado, as he is nicknamed, and he's wearing number five. I don't know if you saw, so he's going to be a Grand Theft Alvarado 5 in New York, which is just awesome. But New York has funny guard depth. It's Brunson, it's McBride, who they seem to be a better team when both of those guys are on the floor. And beyond that, it's a bit dicey, and they kind of have some odd people taking the ball up and handling the ball consistently. And it's Landry Shamet, and it's Cat sometimes, and it's Mikal Bridges handling the ball sometimes. And also, that they're just not the deepest team to begin with. And they were able to flip Dalen Terry, who they got in I think they got him in the Gershon Yabusele trade. I don't know. They got him from some other trade, Dalen Terry, from Chicago, I believe. And they flipped two second round picks to New Orleans for Jose Alvarado. And I just think that's a home run of a trade for New York. Again, Dalen Terry is just, he's not a good basketball player. And, two second round picks, like whatever. To add a player who is really going to contribute and make a big impact on a team that's trying to win a championship right now and is in that window where they can. I think that's just such an awesome ad for New York. And he's going to play an almost, TJ McConnell, Alex Caruso like impact. Maybe not to the degree of Caruso, but we saw how impactful TJ McConnell was for the Pacers last year. And Jose Alvarado, while he's a bit of a different player, it's kind of the same archetype of player, in the same type of role. And New York didn't have that prior to this trade. So I just think that is a tremendous ad by the Knicks. And they really didn't have to give up a whole lot to get him.
Grand Theft Alvarado in the Big Apple, kind of just, I wouldn't say wasting his career, but not seeing his true potential over in New Orleans. The Pelicans, not really the greatest of teams at the moment, although they have their bright spots in like Derek Queen and Jeremiah Fears. Alvarado had his moments, got his reputation for sneaking up behind players. Like he'd hide in the corner on an inbound and then sneak up and steal the ball. It's kind of how he became known as GTA, Grand Theft Alvarado. And the five is definitely a quality touch over in New York. And I think it's something the Knicks need. They could use another smart, sharp defender like Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby. Jalen Brunson is not exactly a defensive guru. So having a guard that can maybe be played with Brunson at times will help with Brunson's inefficiencies on defense. And yeah, great trade overall. Didn't really think about that, but gets him out of New Orleans, and I think he's from the area actually. He's from New York,
Yeah, I think he is. I think you're
or he
right.
cheered for the Knicks or something. I read somewhere. Okay,
I think
yeah.
you're
So
right. Yeah.
hometown kid getting to play in front of the Garden. I think the fans will make him a fan favorite really quick. All right. We are now in the top two. And my number two is kind of a big one, but not in terms of like overall, like it's one player, but just it was a lot of craziness going on. And this one is called A Play in Three Acts. No Bull in Chicago. And I think you know what I mean by bull. So the Chicago Bulls made a lot of trades and reroutings, and they let go of big pieces like Nikola Vucevic, Ayo Dosunmu, and Kobe White. Nikola Vucevic is now on the Celtics. Kobe White is now on the Hornets, and Ayo Dosunmu is now with the Timberwolves. Basically, to make a long story short, the Bulls ended up acquiring many players from many different teams. Jaden Ivey from the Pistons, Anthony Simons from the Celtics, Rob Dillingham and Leonard Millard from the Timberwolves, Nick Richards from the Suns, and Colin Sexton from the Hornets. Many teams and many varieties of players. I think it's clear at this point that Chicago's front office is focusing on the future and finally building around Josh Giddey. The Bulls have been let's call it a joke for the last bunch of years. They just have not been able to build a steady team. DeMar DeRozan, Zach LaVine, and Alex Caruso, that lineup looked like years ago. And obviously, DeRozan and LaVine are rotting away on the team known as the Sacramento Kings, and Alex Caruso winning a ring with the Thunder just a few months ago. Now, my question is, can players like Jaden Ivey, Anthony Simons, and Rob Dillingham shine in these new roles with the Bulls? Jaden Ivey kind of got lost in translation with the Pistons. Anthony Simons finally got to a contender in the Celtics after spending many a year in Portland and now going right back to a middle of the road team in the Bulls. Rob Dillingham was a top pick for the Timberwolves in the last couple years, didn't really get a lot of playing time, so maybe he can shine on the Bulls. And I'm interested to see how they put all these pieces together. There's a lot of good pieces, but can they mesh well under Billy Donovan? That is what remains to be seen. The Bulls have not won a playoff series since 2015, and we are in the year 2026. They lost a first round series in 2017 and 2022 since then, trying to get back, Chris, into some kind of playoff contention. The Bulls, I think, are finally pulling the plug on these last remaining players like Nikola Vucevic, who can give you something, but maybe is not a true contending player. Celtics get a center and just a lot of pieces moving around, but the Bulls, I think, are winners at the deadline in terms of deciding that they want to contend now.
Yeah, bro. Shout out the Bulls. Like, I think a really important attribute as a human being is being able to be self-aware. And, that's something that the Chicago Bulls struggled with for a very long time here. And I just might be understating that. I mean, like you said, they haven't won a playoff series since what, 2015, you said? And they've kind of just been stuck in mediocrity since. And just like you said, just holding on to all of these meh players, just accepting being the nine seed every year and fighting in play-in spots. And it's just really good to see them. And I'm really happy for Bulls fans too, who have been tired of this probably for the last like 8 years at this point. I mean, there might have been a maybe 2 year period after the last playoff series win where they might have had a little bit of hope. But yeah, it's been so long now that they've just accepted mediocrity and they're finally moving off of it. Trading a lot of their quality players, like you said, they're a team full of meh players. But they did have some quality pieces, and that proved in the trade market when they offered these guys. One of them I'll get to in one moment here. But shout out Chicago for just finally pulling the plug here. It took forever, but you know what? At this point, I'm just proud of them for doing it. Shout out the Bulls and their fans. I mean, they must be overjoyed to see the direction of this franchise going either direction. It's going downward. They're going to be losing more games, but I bet they are so happy to see it moving downwards and not stagnant at the 9 seed. So yeah, shout out the Bulls. My number two, man, we think alike, Larry. Mine's not quite, the entirety of the Bulls deadline, but Ayo Dosunmu to Minnesota. What an ad for Minnesota. I mean, that is just insane to be able to fill such a large need so effectively. Ayo Dosunmu has really turned himself into like a great guard option. He's just been stellar this year, and he really cemented himself as one of the few players on the Bulls who could actually maybe hold up on a contending type of team or just even feel wanted by a contending team. It's felt like the Kings and the Bulls are kind of just, like the home for misfit players lately, where it's all these guys that like no serious team wants. Like no serious team wants Zach LaVine on their roster. No serious team wants Nikola Vucevic on their roster. But Ayo Dosunmu, he really kind of broke out in Chicago as one of these players that could really feel wanted by a serious organization, which Minnesota is. And they traded a good bit to get him. They traded Rob Dillingham, Leonard Miller, and 4 second-round picks to Chicago for Ayo Dosunmu and Julian Phillips. So they gave up a fair bit of draft capital. And Rob Dillingham, I think Rob Dillingham is just a nothing player. Like I'm just not excited at all about the prospect of Rob Dillingham at this point. I really liked him in the draft. Like I remember I was all over that trade when Minnesota traded up for him. I loved that. I think I just fell too hard in love with the idea of the Kentucky guard. It's hard not to. And Dillingham was a really fun player in college. But Rob Dillingham is just, I just have a really hard time seeing him becoming any sort of a success in the NBA at this point. He is a total sieve on defense, and he really just does not have a good feel for the floor at a position where you need to. So, and I talk about the need. Minnesota was trotting out Rob Dillingham and Bones Highland as their little pack-a-punch point guard duo, which is just so abysmal for a team that really has hopes to go deep in the playoffs. Bones Highland and Rob Dillingham, like it's like they were more focused on making the and one hoop mixtape than having a serious championship contending point guard core. And they became aware of that halfway through the season here that this was just not going to cut it. And Ayo Dosunmu, I mean that is a picture perfect ad for them. It didn't take a whole lot to get him again. You give up 4 picks, like that's nothing to sneeze at. But just such a perfect, tremendous ad at a such dire position of need for a championship contender. I think this has to be high on my list of trades. Just a master class by the guys in Minnesota making decisions. I don't know who their GM is. Maybe is it A-Rod? Is it Alex Rodriguez that has shares in the team?
Yeah,
Uh,
he's the owner with Mark Lore, I think, but they're the owners. He's not the GM though.
Maybe A-Rod called down to the GM and went, "Hey, I don't really care to see this and one hoop mixtape backcourt any longer. Let's get some serious basketball players." And that is exactly what they did. Just such a perfect ad for Minnesota. That's my number two.
Ayo Dosunmu actually is a Chicago native, so imagine your hometown team trading you. That's tough.
I
Although,
mean, it can only be so tough when you're going from the Bulls to the Timberwolves with
but
Tyus.
what's tougher? Should we call him by his government name? I did not know. I figured Ayo was a nickname. I did not know. Chris, do you know what Ayo Dosunmu's actual name is by any chance?
Enlighten me.
Kwamdean Ayapo Dosunmu. I have never heard of the name Kwamdean before. Like I
I don't have
didn't
a Quan Deem in any of my classes.
nah, nah, man. Actually, he's my age. He was born in January of 2000. I was November 2000. So shout out Aya Dosunmu or Kwamdean. Yeah, what a name for our number two pick there. So I went with the big option, the big picture for the Bulls. Chris going with the Dosunmu to Minnesota move to get rid of that and one mixtape over in Minnesota. And now, drum roll please, we move to the number one for our respective trade deadline analyses. And I'm going with all for nothing. And this is Anthony Davis to the Washington Wizards, breaking up probably one of the stupidest trades in NBA history. So Anthony Davis going to the Washington Wizards along with Jaden Hardy, Dante Exum, and D'Angelo Russell for AJ Johnson, Chris Middleton, Malachi Branham, Marvin Bagley III, two firsts and 3 seconds. Malachi was moved to and waived by Charlotte. Exum was waived by the Wizards, and D'Angelo Russell is probably not going to report to Washington, and they probably weren't going to report to him either. So it works out for both sides, actually. Anthony Davis, and the reason I say all for nothing was because Anthony Davis played in just 29 games in a Mavericks uniform due to injuries, and this was all with the blockbuster Luka Doncic trade at last year's trade deadline that broke the internet. Anthony Davis is eligible for a contract extension in August. He's currently out dealing with a left hand issue. And I saw a quote that said when he broke his silence on the trade that he needs to see like what the front office's visions are before he resigns, or to see if he truly wants to stay in Washington. He kind of wants to get a better picture, and I would too, being as you're kind of on the back nine of your career. And the Wizards, despite building something, have not been a true contender in quite a while, since the John Wall and Bradley Beal days. Anthony Davis and Kyrie Irving in Dallas played one game, a total of 25 minutes together. And Chris, do you know how long the trio of Cooper Flag, AD, and Kyrie played together?
Zero.
0 minutes together. This genius plan by Nico Harrison blew up in their faces so badly that they decided to cut their losses and trade Anthony Davis to the nation's capital. Cooper Flag, of course, and Kyrie Irving once he gets back from his injury, whenever that is. And honestly, at this point, with the Mavericks season going down the toilet, I would not be too quick to bring Kyrie back. Just save him for next year and get some chemistry in the offseason. But the big question is, and I know I keep saying question for every section here, why would you trade Luka Doncic if Anthony Davis was never a long-term option? Nico Harrison, before his ceremonial firing, he was defending this trade. Anthony Davis is a defender and basically implying that Luka is a traffic cone on defense, which we already kind of knew anyway.
He wasn't wrong.
Anthony Davis was going to be this defensive pillar for the Mavericks, and Luka is buns, and Cooper Flag, and Kyrie Irving, this is going to work, and we're going to win championships, and defense wins championships, and, spare me. But now you look at this. Anthony Davis still lives by the nickname Data Davis. He's been ridiculed as that for his career, and as much as we want to break that spell, it just never leaves him no matter what. I think he could be a good fit in Washington after they just acquired Trae Young as well. Obviously, they're saving Trae Young for next season. There's no point in bringing him back at the moment. So if Anthony Davis wants to sign up long term, he and Trae Young, I think it could be something. Anthony Davis makes up for Trae Young's inefficiencies on defense, like I said, with Jalen Brunson and Jose Alvarado earlier. Trae Young can get Anthony Davis as a lob threat, but the Mavericks doing this, you traded one of your best players in franchise history for Cooper Flag, essentially, which is, another great player. But after coming off a finals appearance, you bring Anthony Davis, you're expecting to get titles out of this, and then just giving up after 29 games is an embarrassment for the city of Dallas. But my number one pick, Anthony Davis, getting moved off of the Mavericks. Cooper Flag has the keys to the Dallas organization, and we thought the Nets trio of KD, Kyrie, and Harden was bad, and all the Kyrie and the COVID vaccine and, all that. At least they played a couple minutes. This trio never saw the floor together. Absolutely pathetic.
Totally blew up for Dallas, and we could probably spend 2 hours talking about the intricacies of the pure idiocy of I don't even know if that's a word. The pure idiocy
We're
of
making
the
up words if necessary.
we're making up words here on Deal When I Halftime. Just how idiotic that whole situation was. We could spend so long on that. I actually, given that they got basically no picks back for Luca, which was really the true cardinal sin of it all, getting a couple picks back for Anthony Davis at this point of his career and his level of health, I thought was pretty impressive. I thought they got a solid return for Davis, all things considered, but like you said, in the grand scheme of things, just this whole idea of Anthony Davis being a contributor and then being able to win the title, but like within 1 or 2 years after the Luka trade, like it's just like total, like it's just ridiculous to think that would have ever worked out. So good on them for really handing the keys over to Flag. I thought Davis was a solid running mate for Flag. Early in his career, I thought he played better with Davis on the floor. But we're getting to the point now where we look at Cooper Flag and we're like, this dude like is already like a star. Like, I thought the idea of like some Anthony Davis training wheels was a good idea. And I think it was, and I think it worked, but like we've reached this point way quicker than anyone would have expected where like Cooper Flag doesn't need training wheels anymore. Like, I mean, this dude is already like a superstar. It's clear when you watch him, but yeah, I mean that was probably the biggest trade of the deadline, just in, the pure gravity of it. And, it was just a huge trade, especially considering everything that happened in the past with Dallas. So my number one, I have a hard time saying this. I have a hard time thinking about it, to be honest. As a fan of his former team, it's just heartbreaking and it's hard to put into words and it makes my stomach turn. But my number one trade of the deadline was Oklahoma City adding Jared McCain for the Rockets' 2026 first round pick and three second round picks.
The league
Um,
is cooked.
yeah, man, it's friggin' brutal. I mean, out of anywhere you could have given this adorable little star player in the making who has his little dance moves and his painted nails and is always happy. You just had to give him to the dark side. Like really, like geez, it's tough. It's really tough to see. Jared McCain was one of my favorite Sixers. I absolutely loved him. I genuinely think that he has like superstar potential in this league. I think he's the closest thing we've seen to Steph Curry since Steph Curry. Now, obviously, he didn't have the crazy production yet, but when you watch Jared McCain, the way he moves on and off ball, the way he's able to relocate where he is on the floor is super reminiscent of Steph Curry. The way he's just able to warp the floor and his shooting touch and his movement and his feel for where he's going to come open at. Again, it's like nothing we've seen other than Steph Curry. And moving on from him for Houston's first, which is going to be probably bottom 10 in the first round, and three second round picks, like that's it. Like, I mean, if you had told me the Sixers were going to trade Jared McCain this deadline, I mean, it would be just as hard to stomach as just given how much I love him and what I think of him as a player. But, I would expect multiple first round picks in return, if not also like another promising young guard in return. Like I would expect like a king's ransom for Jared McCain. Like a pick that's going to be 20 through 30 and some second round picks. Like it's just unreal to me. And it's unreal how Oklahoma City was able to get him for that price tag. Daryl Morey went on at his press conference about how he had a bigger move planned that just never materialized. Why would you trade a player so young and so talented for a move that's not even set in stone? I don't know what it could have been. It might have been Giannis. Who knows? Making this trade, trading a player so young, so talented, when you don't even have the following move in stone yet, that is like malpractice. Even the idea of trading him for this sort of return in general is malpractice. This is nothing for Jared McCain for the type of player he could be a couple years from now. It's ridiculous. It's unreal to think about, and it makes me sick, to be honest, as a Sixers fan. But number one spot is just Oklahoma City being able to get a player who I think so highly of and is so young. And his production took a small dip. He's working back from a meniscus tear and a tear in his UCL, I believe. He's coming back from some major injuries, and he's 21 years old. Are you kidding? Like, it is unthinkable to think that they were able to get their hands on a player like Jared McCain for, it's 4 picks. That's a lot of draft capital, but these picks are not going to be anything hot. And I think Jared McCain has a better shot to be a great player than any of these 4 low picks are going to be. Jared McCain would go top 3 in a redraft from 2024. It was just an absolute highway robbery. And I don't know if it was Sam Presti that called Daryl Morey. I don't know if it was Morey that called Sam Presti. But if you're the GM of a team and you have a young player whose value might not be at its peak anymore, and you have Sam Presti calling you, and Sam Presti is interested in your player, you just hang up the phone. It's like Howie Roseman in the NFL. You just don't pick up the phone when Howie Roseman's calling. You should not be picking up the phone when Sam Presti's calling, knowing his pedigree of just robbing teams for promising young players. It's just ridiculous, and the rich get richer. And just as you said earlier regarding this trade, it's just sickening. It's absolutely sickening to think that the Thunder got this caliber of player for this sum of picks, and they're my number one. So shout out to them. They got an amazing discount on Jared McCain, who I think is going to be an amazing player.
Yeah, Sam Presti's probably laughing his ass off seeing as Daryl Morey pulled the trigger. The way that he was a rookie of the year candidate, I think he was a runaway at one point, got injured, fell out of the rotation because I don't think anybody knew that VJ Edgecombe was going to take over the Sixers as quickly as he did, next to Maxey and Embiid, of course. But yeah, McCain for scraps, and as I mentioned back in my number 5 slot, and you had mentioned it's the Rockets pick. Doesn't matter if it's the Rockets or the Thunder. It's going to be a worthless pick because both are most likely going to reach the Western Conference Finals at minimum, or at least the Thunder are. And the second round picks are kind of just like candy thrown in. So very odd trade. It's like if you could trade him to any team, that is the one team. Why would you even imagine? Thankfully, he's in the Western Conference, so he's the West problem now. But I don't know why you trade him to the Thunder. If you're going to trade him to somebody, like trade him to like the Rockets or the Timberwolves or the Nuggets or something. The Thunder just won the championship. Don't give them any more assets. So,
They're
uh,
fat enough, man.
yeah,
They're fat enough. Come on.
that was my number 5. That was your number 1. We both had some great picks overall, and we'll see how these trades end up in the short-term future and the long-term future as well. Well, that's all the time we have for today. If you haven't already, make sure to follow the podcast accounts, Chris and me, on social media. The 3 podcast accounts on Instagram, TikTok, and X or Twitter are under @Diehlman@half. My personal X and Instagram are @Larry Diehlman. Chris's personal X and Instagram are @ChrisDippy. All 7 handles are in the description on Buzzsprout, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Remember, although you can find Diehlman at halftime on major podcasting platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, and YouTube, the main podcast website is on Buzzsprout. The website URL is dealman@halftime.buzzsprout.com. Feel free to send a comment by using the Send Us a Text button located in each episode's bio. With the exception of Apple Podcasts, the text option is available on Buzzsprout and all of the major platforms. Your comment could end up in the fan mail section of the Buzzsprout website. This episode was a special edition with our trade deadline analysis. Next week's episode will also be a special edition episode, and we will recap All-Star Weekend, so make sure you tune in for that as well. And then the following week, we'll go back to our normal episodes and discussions. And don't forget to spread the word about Diehlman at halftime. See you next time, fellow Hoops fans.